David Mellor was a cabinet minister in John Major's Conservative government in the 90s, which itself became mired in relentless sleaze scandals. He resigned as Secretary of State for what is now Culture, Media and Sport. He was famously called the Minister for Fun, following a libel case and revelations about a holiday in Marbella. He joins us now. David Mellor, you invented, if I may start away from Sleaze, you invented the role of Secretary of State for Culture, and you were the first Minister for Fun. Not much to laugh about in Yorkshire right now. What do you think we can do about what seems to be a completely shocking neglect of racism in that club?
Well, of course, we don't know, do we, exactly what went on. It doesn't read very well, does it? That an ex-captain says he was treated in a racist way. And I think Yorkshire County Cricket Club really needs to open the windows, let the wind blow through, and get someone in who can actually give an objective account of what went on.
Do you think that there might, at some point, be a role for government here if the English, the ECB, the English Cricketing Board, doesn't get a grip on it?
Well, people are always saying there's a role for government in sport. It doesn't usually work out that way. And you've just spent the last 10 or 15 minutes, not altogether wrongly, trashing what this government does. So the idea that the government would bring any clarity to bear on all of this is by no means established.
Well, I think we just ask questions here rather than trashing any party or government. But just lastly on this, is it your sense, David Mellor, that this is just a Yorkshire issue, or would you follow sport in various ways, I know. Do you think this is a wider issue?
Well, obviously it's a wider issue. It's an issue in society as a whole. I think when you look at Britain compared, I don't know, to a country like France, we have done a lot better in terms of getting people from a wide range of ethnic backgrounds into senior positions in our society. You've only got to look at the much maligned cabinet to see that. But equally plainly, those in charge of great institutions, and indeed, you know, Yorkshire Cricket Club in its way is a great institution, isn't it, have got to ensure that complaints that are made are properly investigated and they don't get a chance to turn totally rancid, as what seems to have happened at Yorkshire. You know, I'm not a Yorkshireman, but I'm sad to see one of the proudest cricketing counties in England produce so many great players put into this situation by inattention from the top.
All right, well, let's turn to the other big story of the day and the reputation of government. You said that I spent the last 10, 15 minutes on it. What's your view?
Well, I can understand why you spent the last 10 or 15 minutes on it. I mean, I think tragically this government is a shambles, and that's only on good days. I think it's astonishing that the Prime Minister has allowed himself to get into this muddle over Owen Paterson. Yeah, Owen Paterson was found by a committee which consists of, as already been said, cross-party membership, consists of independents, of what was called an egregious breach of the rules. He was paid $100,000 a year by one company, $12,000 a year by another company. And that was a reason why, of course, he asks a lot of questions. But where I think it all went hopelessly wrong is that Paterson, instead of showing even an ounce of contrition, then goes and says he'd do it all over again, given the opportunity. And then we read in the papers the following day that Boris is thinking of putting you in the Lords. And I think, you know, there's two issues for this government that are related. One is the Prime Minister has many great strengths, but he doesn't seem to respect the rules. And he himself gets himself into trouble with these rules. And the fact that he doesn't believe in rules will count against him in the long run. The other problem is this business with what ministers then do. I mean, I couldn't believe it when a cabinet minister, Kwasi Kwarteng, went on the media and started calling for Catherine Stone, the regulator's resignation. What on earth do you think he was doing? He was doing it because he thought that would please Boris. And a lot of them, it's like a children's party, you know, they all want to please daddy. But the reality is a cabinet minister should be above and beyond that. I spent 9 years in Mrs. Thatcher's government. And everyone thought that she ruled everybody with a rod of iron. Only partially true. Throughout her administration, senior ministers stood up to her. I remember when Ken Clarke was Secretary of State for Health, I was his assistant. As his deputy, we were doing a lot of stuff on very important fundamental NHS reforms. I do want to come back. He stood up against her.
I do want to come back to put this in historical context, if I may, in a second. But what do you put down the failure this week to? Is it just the Prime Minister not paying attention, or the Prime Minister's attitude, or incompetence, or arrogance? What is going on here?
I think it's an exciting mélange of all of them, isn't it? I think that Jacob Rees-Mogg, who, is sort of his greatest creation is his own personality, but his own personality grates a bit. He should have come down off his rather lofty tower that he inhabits and actually get into the real world and see how this was playing with the public. I think that the Prime Minister is not bothered about the rules. He doesn't have ministers behind him with the confidence to actually say, Prime Minister, you've got this wrong. So when he decides, apparently after a dinner at the Garrick Club, would you believe, he decides that he will whip the party to save Owen Paterson, he's allowed to do it. The Chief Whip doesn't stand up against him. The Leader of the House doesn't stand up against him. None of his ministers stand up against him because these ministers are not really big people.
But he I think a lot of people in the party would say, Mr. Mellor, he's a winner, and that's what politics is about. And contrast to, I guess, your day, folks don't seem to resign these days, do they? Or get sacked.
Well, he's a rock, as an old colleague of mine said, Boris is a rock star. It's got nothing to do with Boris's qualities, which in other respects are considerable. He has an ability to bond with people, including people from an entirely different class and background to himself. Well done him for that. But where it all goes wrong for him is when he abuses that power he has over people to do things like he's done in the past week. We cannot have members of Parliament taking money. We can't taking money in order to advocate cases. And while you may, if I may say so, I'm quite sorry in the years we've known each other that you can only introduce me in terms of some supposed holiday. I just want you to know there was nothing corrupt about that holiday. Tony Blair used to take holidays at other people's expense, and so do lots of MPs. Never a single complaint was made about me to anybody. So if you're trying to equate me with Owen Paterson, I'm sad to see a man like you playing that game.
That is not really to do with Owen Paterson. In fact, I wanted to come precisely to that point. The Prime Minister's holiday in Marbella is actually about to be investigated. And I really wanted to ask you that the rules have come in, Nolan principles and all of that, since you were a cabinet minister. And I'm really going to ask you whether you think you would have behaved any differently had those rules been in place at your time.
But I didn't behave in any way that drew me. I don't know why this is suddenly turning into on me 30 years ago. I did nothing above and beyond what was the norm for members of Parliament.
But David, you're the one who made the comparison, not me.
Yes, because your introduction, we've known each other for many years and always got on very well. I can understand the only basis on which you can introduce someone who's done as much as I have done is simply about some long-forgotten holiday with friends, which, of course, that's what members of Parliament do all the time.
Well, thank you, David Mellor. We lost him on the phone. Well, I was simply going to say thank you, David Mellor, for sharing the benefit of your extensive experience rather than any particular episode. But anyway, here we are.